Hello, everybody. My name is Leonard Langenscheidt, and I'm so excited to be here today. I'm going to talk to you guys about the future of esports. When I moved to Berlin 4 years ago, my first step was go to NOAH to kickstart my networking, so this feels really, really special. Well, what is esports? A lot of you guys may have read about this in the last couple of years, but let's just make sure we're all on the same page. Esports is fundamentally competitive video games and competitions within video games or digital worlds. This means that you're not competing against a computer or exploring computer-generated worlds, but instead you're playing against other players online. And this makes it so interesting for very, very long times, because as you come up with new strategies, other players come up with new strategies, they come up with tricks, you come up with tricks. It's infinitely engaging, and that's become a huge trend. So why do I get to talk to you guys about esports? Number one, I'm a principal at BITKRAFT Esports Ventures. BITKRAFT is the leading venture capital fund in the world for esports. We've done 34 investments, and we're currently investing with our second fund, which is $120 million. Our leading partner, Jens Hilgers, is by many considered to be the godfather of esports. And he's been doing this for 20 years. So if it sounds crazy to you that people are competing in digital worlds now, and that other people might even watch these competitions, imagine what it must have felt like in '97. So first, I'm a principal at BITKRAFT Esports Ventures, but secondly, I'm also a big fan and advocate myself. If you ever run into Lenny Longlegs online, I'm pretty sure you're in for a crazy hour. So, esports. As some of you may have read already, esports is a crazy growth field. Right now we're seeing consistently over 30–35% growth every single year, and we have 450 million people watching these competitions online. That's purely people watching, and that's purely the sort of core esports market, which means leagues and tournaments and broadcast rights and sponsorships and stuff like that. But when you're really thinking about it, the market becomes a lot more interesting when you're thinking about the games as a whole, because these games are what's so crazy. So League of Legends, that's on the left side, is one of the most popular esports games. It was released more than 10 years ago, and there's still 111 million people playing it every single month. This number is actually still growing. So this doesn't get old. In fact, it just keeps going and going and going, and more people keep engaging with it. Secondly, new esports titles get users in at a crazy rate. As we're seeing here, a game called PUBG, which you may have never heard of in your life, in just 450 days, got over 400 million people registered. That's nearly 1 million people every day for a year and a half. So we're seeing these games retain users super, super well, and they grow very quickly. And that might be interesting on the business side, but I actually think esports is also the most interesting topic you can think about intellectually, and here's why. I think esports are humanity's first step into the digital world. For decades, we've been obsessed with this idea of one day living in a digital world or having a second life online, whatever you might call it. But quite frankly, there was never that big of a reason to do it. Why would you want to be in the digital world if you can be in the real world? Well, esports has been the hook that has gotten a lot of young people, a lot of teenagers, to spend tons of time in digital worlds and get used to it. So this competition was the initial hook. But now that they're in the digital worlds, they're here to stay. And they're suddenly starting not just to compete in these digital worlds, but they're also just hanging out in these worlds. And that's the next step. So these games, while people initially just competed in them, these games are now a place to hang out. And this is a tweet that I think says it really well. They hang out in Fortnite the way we used to hang out in basements or backyards. We played games or kicked the ball around, but it was all a pretense for the social aspect. So esports, in a way, have become this digital place where people come together after school to simply hang out. So initially, people came to compete, but at this point, whether you care about the game or not, this is where you're going to go because this is where your friends are. This is where tons of young communities are. And the more people are there, the more interesting it becomes. When you talk to any teenager right now, all of their friends in the afternoon are hanging out in Fortnite. So how are you going to convince them not to hang out in Fortnite? So this is the first development, but I think we can take this a step further. I think if we believe this, then overall there will be tons of, dozens of digital worlds, and most of them will actually not be competitive anymore. Why? I think as a young person, you might be really interested in competition. But as you grow up, and as more and more people sort of join this field, I have no doubt that there will be other things that people want to do online. So while some people care about competition, I think people also want to be engaged culturally and socially and even romantically, whatever you want. And I think all of that will start taking place in digital worlds because all these young people are so used to spending time online. So the way we used to, go play soccer a lot or play hide and seek, we now care about going to dinner parties. And it's all about where we sort of established our life that we stay. So there's 2 examples of this happening already. Number 1, there was a DJ called Marshmello who recently did a concert within a video game. So he worked together with the publisher of the video game Fortnite and set up a stage and a concert within the digital world. Over the course of a day, more than 10 million people showed up to this concert to check it out and show off their digital dance moves. So they were doing crazy moves in front of a purely digital space in a digital world. It was amazing. And secondly, I myself have actually hosted a book club meeting in a digital world. We used the app VR Chat, and we got together a bunch of people from around the world and had a book club meeting where each of us was represented by a purely digital avatar, and that was actually really liberating, not to see the other people, but to discuss freely. So I really believe in this. But what are we going to do with this sort of grand thesis? What do we care about all these digital worlds? I tried to condense my thinking into 2 main takeaways that I think each of you guys can really hold on to after this. Number 1, the investment one, and number 2, sort of a general one. First, investment. I think when people think about esports right now, they think about investing in teams or in leagues or something like that, in streaming technologies, and that might be cool, and that's great, but I think it's kind of missing the point of the potential of all this. I think when you're really thinking about all of these digital worlds, the most interesting investments are those into technology that then becomes the framework for all of these different worlds. So I think you can invest in a company that might be successful in esports first, but then will be successful for musical worlds and for social worlds and all of these things. And BITKRAFT uses this thesis for a couple of our investments. One of them I want to talk about is a company called Lofeld, which is actually based here in Berlin. Lofeld is beckoning the new age of HD haptics. Haptics are the way that a hardware device or any kind of electronics might vibrate or communicate a kind of atmosphere or audio to a body. So they've created incredible technology that makes it very immersive to use a headset with these vibrators or a mouse or a keyboard. And I think if you believe that there will be a lot of different digital worlds, I think for every single one of these worlds, you're going to care about having an immersive experience, so you're going to care about Lofeld. So while they're doing their proof of concept in esports, they're going to do all of these other fields too. And it's similar for Manticore Games. Manticore Games is doing a game engine that allows small teams, independent developers, to create digital worlds with amazing graphics very, very quickly. I think a lot of these worlds will be sort of created by communities and not by big companies. So if this company succeeds, we'll have a lot of different worlds that are built on this technology fundamentally. So takeaway number 1, if you're investing in esports, I think ideally you don't just invest in a team, but you invest in these technology companies that will spread their wings all across all these different worlds. Second lesson, and this one's a bit more of a lofty one, but I love this. This is something that I've kind of come up with myself and, stick with me. The dawn of digital ethics. Right now we have incredible potential in these worlds. There's tons of different stuff going on, hundreds of millions of people who are diving into digital worlds, and there's great potential, but it's also really scary. On the one hand, it's easy to imagine a dystopian society where you have these digital worlds and everybody's trapped in this kind of virtual rat race. They're just being in their worlds, but it's horrible. But it's also easy to imagine that these digital worlds are what it takes for humans to really have an amazing time in their entire life, because there's suddenly no inequality anymore. Everybody can have the life that they want. They can have the house they want. They can have exactly the avatar and look like what they want. Everything is possible. You could have adventures all around the world, and everybody could be having this. So I think we're at a crossroads where both of this is possible. And I think that right now, the way we as humans are interacting with this technology and are interacting with each other online is sort of the base of what it will be like over the next generations. So I think we need to start caring about the way that people interact online with each other in these digital worlds. I want you, but I also want parents, and I want teachers and politicians to not just think of esports as like, wow, there's people watching other people play video games. I want you to think of these digital worlds which are just coming into existence, and we're now sitting here laying the ethical framework for the worlds that our generations will end up spending their life in. That's all the time we have, but it was so exciting for me to be here. Please come say hi, and whether you want to talk about what some cool technology trends in esports are, or whether you're interested in the ethical framework that I'm looking to set as Lenny Longlegs, or if you just want to exchange gamer tags, I'm here for you. I'll be here all day. Come find me. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lenny.